Well, so far in the last week or so, we've really focused on a very specific texture type for a very specific situation. That is homorhythmic homophony for voices. As you're aware, classical music is more than just vocal music, and it's certainly much more than just that texture. So I want to take a step away from writing for voices and talk about voice leading and voicing for keyboard. By doing this, we're able to begin to move into our next texture type, which is melody and accompaniment. So what I want to do is take the harmonic progression, the 1-5-1-4-5 progression, where we included inversions, and I want to rewrite it so that it's for keyboard voicing, to show you the differences between voicing for voices and voicing for keyboard. So here we have our original harmonic progression, the 1-5-6-4, passing 6-4, to 1-6-4, 1-6-4-5 progression. We see our bass moves very smoothly. Well, let's take this same progression and do keyboard voicing. Now, the first, perhaps the most important thing you should understand about keyboard voicing when we do it is that we're going to have only one note in the left hand and 3 notes in the right hand. And you see, I've been cheating a little bit here. Sorry I should clarify this. I've been kind of a bad music theory instructor because I've been doing this as a single kind of thing. You see that the stems are attached. When you work in a music notation program, it's just so much easier to work this way. But when you're writing for voices, actually, you should write this one with stems down, bass with stems down, tenor with stem up, alto with stems down, and then soprano with stem up. So you can see the 4 voices separately. I haven't been doing that. Sorry about that. To the music theory police, I apologize. But it's just so much easier to put into the music notation program like this, so I've been cheating a little bit. But now I'm no longer going to cheat. Now I'm actually going to do proper keyboard voicing, because in keyboard voicing you have this situation, you have 3+1. So so we can put in our bass voice, which will be basically this. That's from our original. Might as well put in, whoops. Let's put in the harmonic progression as well, just so we can see it as we're going along. And now what we're going to do is, in the right hand, give the other 3 notes. And you know, generally the rules of doubling the root and root position chords and all that stuff that came from earlier, that still applies. One of the main differences, actually, you'll see right away when I go to voice the first chord. First of all, you very frequently use, actually almost exclusively, you'll use closed voicing, the closed structure. And there's a reason for this. These 3 notes have to be played by one hand. When you start trying to put a 5th and a 6th between the tenor and alto and a 5th between the alto and soprano, the hand has to stretch so much that it can't really reach it. So you want to try to keep all of this within 1 octave. And so you almost always use what we would call closed structure. Let me voice this chord then. Whoops. And so the first thing you'll notice, that's the other main difference between keyboard voicing and 4-part vocal writing, is the huge span between the bass and what we could call the alto, the tenor, the bass and the tenor. Although these terms maybe aren't the most appropriate terms when we've switched over to keyboard voicing, but you can follow me when I use them, so I just use them. You see that it's 2 octave. Now, when you were doing 4-part vocal writing, that wasn't something that you could think about. You really were maxing out at an interval of a 1/10 between the lower voices. Keyboard voicing, it's no problem. So, and of course it wouldn't be unusual for a pianist to get a part that did this, added in this extra voice. Now there's less room, but just gives us the, that is less of a leap between these. Yeah, it's only an octave. And it gives us more support in the bass. But when we practice keyboard voicing, we usually just use 4 voices. And we have a 3+1 situation. And then we just voice lead from here. So we want to keep the common tone. So let's put in our common tone. We're going to a D major chord, yeah? So this is our common tone, the D. And we want to voice lead these as smoothly as possible. We need to remember we need to have 2 fifths in this chord, right? Root, third, fifth, and fifth, because it's a second inversion triad. It's a 6/4 chord. Okay, well then, if we do that, we get a nice smooth voice leading here by step of the other 2 voices, and we get the second, fifth. Good, that's fine. Now we've got the third in the bass of it's the G minor chord. We have the third in the bass. Let's again keep our common tone. And if we voice lead these, let's get 2 fifths in this one for a very common kind of keyboard voicing. I'll show it to you. And basically we need to move this guy by step. So let's say we move the A by step. You could also argue, oh, well, this is really the F sharp resolving, right? Because this is the leading tone. But the leading tone, we're going to move down instead. Like that. So that we get the third in the bass, the root here, and 2 fifths. You don't have to use this, but well, if we did another version, for instance, this would be the other kind of obvious choice. Well, you could do that, but hopefully you would stop and sort of go through the checklist of voice leading and double check your voice leading, and then you'd realize you have parallel octaves between the alto, quote unquote, and the bass. So that's not going to work out. So we do this one instead. It's good because it actually sets us up nicely for voice leading to this 4 chord. Our common tone, again, let's try to keep our common tone, which we can right here. Common tone here is the G. Let's set that down there. Well, we have root and we got fifth, so we need another root and third. Well, this guy is 1 step away from the root, and these, well, one of these can go up and one of them can go down. When one goes up, it gives us the third. When one goes down, it gives us the root. And it makes a lot of sense then that that one goes down and that one goes up. So we have root, root, third, fifth, a nice voicing and very nice voice leading from the 1/6 to the 4. Again, let's try to keep a common tone here, which would be this G. We know we need to double this D. It's the 5th of the chord. We know we need to do that because it's a 6/4 chord, second inversion triad. So where can we get the D the most easily? Well, it would probably come most easily from this E flat. So let's put that there. And the C then moves very nicely down to the remaining note, which is the B flat. So we have root, third, fifth, and fifth. And then there's truly only one voice leading that you can do from here to here. And it's because these notes that we keep the common tone. So let me do that first. We're going to keep the common tones. So we're going to keep these 2 Ds because they're the 5th. And then we're going to move the others by step so that we get, whoops, that. especially when you do this 164, cadential 164 to 5, the cadential 6/4 to 5, this needs to be as smooth as possible. And the reason for that is these notes are actually thought of as just a kind of decoration of these notes. You could look at this almost like a suspension that needs to be resolved down to these notes. And in fact, some theory books and some theorists explain it this way. They would actually explain this as a 5 chord. Then sometimes it's even written 5/6/4, which doesn't, when you add up the chord, it doesn't make much sense. But when you think about it theoretically, it makes a lot of sense. Because this chord is not functioning as a 1 chord, it's functioning as a 5 chord. It's functioning as a dominant. All that is, that's theoretical stuff, and if it interests you, I hope that was helpful to kind of explain what's going on here theoretically. But really, that's the theoretical background for why these voices then just need to move as smoothly as possible. The 6 needs to go to the 5, and the 4 needs to go to the 3, to the 3rd. Let's take a listen to both of them so we can hear the differences between this sort of this more open-voiced 4-part chorale texture and this keyboard texture. So not very big differences. Certainly in terms of texture, they sound like, and they are the same texture type. In terms of voicing, we do get this sounding more like what a piano would be playing. This is much more like what singers would do. But I want to make one last point, one small point. This texture, this voicing, you will see nonetheless in keyboard writing. When a keyboard piece is trying to imitate vocal homophony and chorale writing, you'll see them use this. The composer won't use this kind of voicing. But I do want to show you this voicing because it's the springboard for the next thing we're going to do, which is take this thing and add some kind of rhythmic pattern to it so that we get a kind of keyboard accompaniment. We'll do that in a few videos, but next what I think is best is if you took some time to do guided practice in keyboard voicing.